unable to convert. So I think that had a good impact. And Pedrinho off the bench, I want to see him continue in that role because obviously that's where he's been the most successful, where he's contributed to these comebacks and got goal contributions, as opposed to when he started. He's had some moments here and there, but I think largely he does better when he can enter the game against tired legs and do things that the other team doesn't expect because the players that he's replacing aren't making the same movements that he is. I'd like to see that continue for Pedrinho off the bench. For me, just don't overthink it. If he's better off the bench, play him off the bench, and that's, I think, what we'll probably see going forward.
You know, one thing I'd like to see, we've watched Logan Farrington come in as that right-sided winger. He's not really a right winger, but, you know, he can make things happen over there, getting into different spots. What has he done that now? 8, 10 times off the bench, probably playing in that position.
Give or take, yeah.
So what I would like to see is a couple of instances of some pattern play that tells me that they're working with him in that spot and saying when he gets the ball here, A does this and B does this, and you know I want to see a little bit of combination play there because basically what I see is Farrington driving in, gets ahead of everybody, and then he sort of looks up. Peter Musa's. I'm not sure where Peter Musa is. He's not in front of goal. I don't know where the backside winger is. I don't. And basically, Farrington sort of throws his hands up and passes the ball back to Lucho Acosta, and then everything just sort of it's Lucho Acosta deferential, but in that moment, it's probably the right choice. But I want to see that they're doing something on the training ground that says when Logan gets the ball here, we got two things we're going to do. If it's the old white computer, if then If this happens, do that.
If this, then that.
Yes. So, and I'm not sure I'm seeing that because he definitely looks like he got in that spot right at the corner of the penalty area at least 3 times today and just didn't sort of know what to do. And that's not his fault. It's not his, that's if he's a winger, he can push the ball wide, get around the corner, get a cross in. But, if there's nobody there to accept a cross, even if he can do it, then what's the point?
So I want to ask this question. I promise I'm not trying to lead. This is a genuine question I can ask. We're 19 games into the season now, and we're still asking these very valid questions. I think what you've asked is extremely valid. At some, I genuinely don't know the answer. What do we put this up to? Is this just a lack of offensive identity? Is it a player issue? Because all these questions that we have, I think, are very valid, but I don't know what
I feel like I answered the question right away tonight. It's all of those things together. For me, that's what it is, Sam.
Yeah, I think just to put it in perspective, and this isn't going to make anyone feel any better, Dallas came into this one off of 2 losses in a row at home against Western Conference opponents. This is the first time since July 2004 that they've lost 3 straight at home against Western Conference teams. That's how bad we are right now at home, and ultimately, as good as the team has been on the road, they're wasting all that effort and all those moments and all of the comebacks and everything that has made this season entertaining and the roller coaster moments, the highs, by just not getting it done at home. I mean, that's just, we can say it in many different ways, but that's where we're at.
By the way, it doesn't get a lot easier because Minnesota comes in next, and Minnesota is right beneath San Diego in the Western Conference standings.
Yeah, you played 3 tough matches at home at a time when you need road form. I know there's not a lot of thought towards the positives because you lost again at home, but I do think there were some good performances tonight from Dallas. A couple of them I've got written down. Anytime you concede 3 goals, I think some people say the goalkeeper wasn't effective. I thought this was another solid game for Martin Paz. I think he's growing some too. This might be more of a topic for the agenda, but I like seeing him be a little bit more active in front of his goal, the punches. I think that's a growth in his game that he should be commended for. Sebastian Lletget played a full...
Well, can we stop there for a second?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Because I 100% agree. Look, 3 goals he gave up. 1 from the penalty spot. 1 where Chuck Lozano slips in between at the point-blank range, slips in between, I believe it was Moore and Abubakar.
Yes.
And, puts one in from 2 feet away. And then the last one where Angel gets the ball and has time to set up a shot at 8 yards and blast it. I mean, absolutely zero fault for Martin Paz, and I completely agree. I thought he controlled his goal area on all the high crosses really well tonight.
Yeah, the evolution of Martin Paz has been really great to see since we've started calling his matches in 2022. I feel like the results are not standing up to what he's really performing. And again, what I was saying, Sebastian Lletget played another, I think, really good match. He played 3 days ago as well, so he was clearly worn out. But he gets a goal. He gets the goal in the 56th minute. I think he really was thriving in that 8 before he came off as well. It's really good to see him just come back from injury, and he picked right back up where he left off before. He was really good when he left. He had that hamstring issue, but he comes right back. And it's like he never left, really and truly.
Yeah, he didn't misplace a pass in this game, and he got the goal. I think he was a really solid presence in midfield, and I think if we ever get to see the full evolution of this Dallas midfield, whether it's Kaique and Ramiro at the holding position with Paxton, Pomacall, and Sebastian Lletget all together, I think there's real potential for that to do, wonders compared to what we've had to deal with throughout this season of sort of fitting players in positions they're not as comfortable in, playing players into form, things like that. I think if you can get to that first full choice, midfield at some point in the season, we'll really see how much of a difference it can make. I just don't know when and if it's going to happen.
Yeah, and look, it's not a big surprise. I thought the first half, organization-wise, Dallas looked pretty good. And it's no big surprise. We talked about it because you bring in one change in the midfield, but that one change gets two players into better positions. Nolan Norris playing as that central defensive midfielder where he has started games before for this team. And then Sebastian Lletget goes a little higher up the field and plays as that box-to-box midfielder. He's not a holding midfielder. That's where they were having to play him before. So now you've got Lletget in his more natural position. No surprise that he has a good game.
And I want to give a small shout-out to Nolan Norris. I know you all guys praised him a little earlier. This is a guy that got almost all of his starts this year at left back to start the season. They asked him to come in at defensive mid because they have basically nothing else due to injury and suspension. And he plays 45 minutes, and you could say maybe he was a little bit too ambitious on his passing at times, but I thought he barely put a toe out of line and only comes off because he gets hurt.
And got hurt because he makes a big important tackle at the edge of the penalty area.
Yeah, just makes a crunching tackle that would have been on an NFL jacked up film 20 years ago. But a big commitment to him. If he had gotten to play that second half, he probably makes my player list. But special tip of the hat to him. Shaq Moore, I think, also deserves some attention here because he just keeps on being Shaq Moore, man. He provides width. He plays hard. He never, the dude is always chugging. He, regardless, he is probably, you can make the argument, one of the most consistent players for FC Dallas. Is he the best right back in MLS? No, I wouldn't say that's fair, but I think, especially compared to what we've seen the last few years at that spot, he provides attacking width. He provides defensive stability. The dude is just a rock back there, and he had another good game tonight.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, particularly in the first half, Mighton was really frustrated, and Shaq Moore was just looked like a man against a boy, really, just shielding him out, keeping him out, forcing him backwards the entire half. He supplied a cross, that great ball in for the Musa header that was off target. So I think Moore, coming off of a goal on Wednesday, had another good game on the quick turnaround. He's been a really standout addition for me in the offseason, just upgrading that position in every facet.
Look, both outside backs for me. If I sat here and wrote down a list of concerns about this team, I'm absolutely certain that outside backs are just not making the list. They've both been solid this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially now as you figure Norris' depth for Marco Farfan. There's nothing behind Shaq Moore, so if that ship goes down, buddy, we're all going down with it. But so far, so good through 19 matches. He's been just truly outstanding.
Oh, and don't forget, we talked about it. He put an absolute laser of a cross into Peter Musa that could have turned into the goal that literally changed the season, but Musa just, I said the other day, look, you give a striker 2 or 3 good chances, you want him to finish one of them. You're thrilled if he finishes 2 of them, but I don't want to come down too hard on Peter Musa because he had one other really good chance tonight and he put it away. So, it would have been great to see him score that goal. But anyway, the point is, Shaq Moore really, he put the ball in the right place for him.
Yeah, I'm quite the opposite. I thought Musa had a really good game. Yes, the finishing, you want to see it'd be there, but
I just said.
Yeah.
You said, well, I thought Moose had a good year. I did too. I mean, it was just that you would have liked to have seen him do that. Although I will say, Sam, I want to hear your Ryan. What do you think about this? I do want to see Moose in front of the goal a little bit more.
Yeah, I think we talked about this all the way back at the start of the season, right? But at that time, I think his passing is a little bit more dialed in.
It was. And
I think players, with Julio on the field, you don't mind him dropping a little bit more because somebody's going to be able to stretch with the ball in behind. And without Julio, I think really he needs to be holding the higher position. And maybe that's just something that the coaching staff needs to identify and talk to him about. Or maybe it's something that he's kind of doing in the flow of the game. But, particularly when Farrington was getting in along the right side, you just wanted to see him in there crashing the box because that's where he can do his best work. So he gets his 7th goal of the season. I think it's been a solid campaign for Petr Musa, but he hasn't reached the absolute heights that he had in that heater of a streak last summer. Maybe that's still to come for him, and Dallas would need it for certainly.
Yeah, and before the conversation was usually in the build-up. You didn't want to see – some people didn't want to see him assisting the build-up. I still don't mind that. I'm talking about what you just said a second ago. In the final third, once the ball arrives into the final third, I want to see him be more Wondolowski, more Joveljic, the way Joveljic plays, Dejan Joveljic. So instead of sort of hanging out outside the box looking to combine as often – Get in there and occupy the center backs. Get off the center back's back shoulder and be a problem in there and occupy them that way, as opposed to being the presence that he wants the ball dropped back to him and then to play make from there. But okay, so he play makes. Well, if Lucho, that's Lucho Acosta's job, and I feel like they're sort of trying to do the same job sometimes, and then sometimes they can combine a little bit and make a little magic, but they haven't been able to make that kind of magic for quite a while now. So I think it's time to try something else, which is, for me, Petr Musa. Everybody says you're a box striker. Okay, go be a box striker.
Well, we saw it with when Peter Luxon took over as the interim last year. He really found success. And, I think you're right, because if he occupies those center backs, one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to open up space for somebody else, or he's just going to be there and knock home goals because we know he can do it. He just needs to get there. So I think you're 100% correct on that. I know Alvaro is one of those players. We've had a lot of discussion with him coming into this. I know what's going to sound like I'm going to say here, but I'll clarify it. After 3 games, I think Alvaro is an MLS player. I'm not saying he's an MLS starter right now, but I think he's shown more than enough, even with the mistakes over the last couple games, to show that he can be on this roster, and he is, at the very least, a development piece that can play in the league. Do I want him starting every week? No, I want Osaze Urguide out there. But I'm like enough to what I see that this project should probably proceed as going.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with you. I think, by far, the expectations were there even expectations for him coming in against Kansas City, and he did well enough to win the job. And then this week was kind of, he got the start against San Jose, and then it was a needs-must situation today. But I feel confident enough to see him in the lineup going forward when we need him. But I just want to point out, I don't think that this, we're one window into completely overhauling this roster. And I think that right now the team as it stands can't sustain losing the players that are out right now, particularly losing Osaze Urguide, particularly losing Anderson Julio, and then not having either Ramiro or Kaique. The roster is just not constructed in a way yet to be able to sustain those losses and put out a consistent 11 with players in their actual spots that they're comfortable playing and maintain the identity of the team. If you look at San Diego, credit to them, they had an even longer list of guys out today, including 2 of their starting central midfielders as well, De La Torre and Godoy. Their style of play is so ingrained in everybody that they are able to plug and play with different players, even with guys out. It didn't matter. They were still able to control the ball, manipulate Dallas, and ultimately you've got 2 top-line guys in Lozano and Dreyer that they could get into the spaces that they wanted and ultimately be killers in the final third. So I think right now the Dallas roster is in flux. San Diego, all the credit that we're giving them, they got to build from scratch, and this window, Dallas is taking a roster that didn't make the playoffs last year, and they're trying to flip it as quickly as they can into a completely new group. So
Dallas came close to building from scratch.
It wasn't far from that. So I think, just as a reminder, we are still in a rebuild year, and there may be more changes to come in the summer window. But as it stands right now, the depth isn't there for Dallas in these particular positions, defensive midfield and center back, to be down the guys that they're down right now, and that's what we saw, over these 2 home games when they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I would agree. And, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, on the agenda and on postgame further about the development of this roster. But it is still a work in progress. We expect things because we see the good players like Musa and Acosta and Urguide, but there's still a lot of road to go for this. And, obviously these are the growing pains that come with the roster that is set up like FC Dallas is. Well, before we look ahead to what's on July 4th this year, do we have any final thoughts on FC Dallas 2? Sandy, I can see, okay, no. The answer is no. There we go. I won't even finish the question. So let's look ahead to Independence Day. It's a tradition here at Toyota Stadium. It's July 4th, fireworks, and FC Dallas versus Minnesota United. Again, limited tickets left, fcdallastickets.com if you want to be here. If you can't be here, don't worry. We've got you covered on the FC Dallas Radio Network. Pre-game at 7 o'clock, our full run of broadcast, and then we have post-game.
Throw us off and track them where you don't want to. You don't need to track them. Keep an offside line. They keep running, and we keep our structure. But they do that. They do some intricacies that just unselfishly run through the back line, and even when the guy in the ball is not even has his head up. It's just it's a tactic to draw players and move players around and pull your shape apart. So I'll take a look at it, but I don't know exactly the moment maybe you're speaking of.
No, totally. I appreciate that. I was thinking more like Lozano's goal, late run, kind of got lost in between the lines. And there
Was that the second goal?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was the one where Siki plays a ball, high in the air that, was underplayed that put them off on a numbers ahead counterattack. And Chucky is a fast player. Like we don't want to give up transition to a guy like Chucky. So when he plays the ball wide and starts running through, they had multiple runners. It was a moment that didn't need to happen. And I haven't looked at it again exactly, but in my vague mind, I mean, he's committed to the back post. Guy gets on the ball and whips it hard, and guys need to be tracking, and we shouldn't give up that goal. But counterattacks typically happen off of careless errors, and that's what happened.
Coach, just curious what the message was after this game, especially with another game coming up at home next Friday.
I mean, I can't. The effort was there. It's not like I'm watching a team that's not giving effort, and we had chances. I would argue when it's 2-2, we had two huge chances to go 3-2 up before they scored. That's the margins. That's the margins of every sport. That's why it's called. We talk about moments. You take your moments or you don't, and they took their moment for the third goal. And we don't want to give up 3 goals. We can't. We got to stop bleeding goals. But we had our chances. So I like what we created with the ball tonight. I thought we were bright. We had plenty of chances to win the game. For me, it was more of disappointment on the type of goals we gave up.
We'll have one question from the Zoom.
Buzz Carrick, third degree, Coach. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yep.
You were missing tonight 2 guys that I think of as your vocal organizers in the back, Urgide and Ibiaga. How did you feel like Abubakar or Alvaro did, whichever one was supposed to be the more organized leader back there? How did you think your collective defense fared without those 2 vocal leaders that you normally would have one or the other of?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lawless is more of the communicator. I mean, Alvaro doesn't speak English; he speaks Portuguese, so he's not going to be really, unless it's. Even though he is learning English very fast, and he is a vocal guy, and he will be great. He's young, and he's figuring the league out and at light speed right now. And there's. I got to look at the third goal. I got to figure out where Alvaro's positioning. But he's a 19, 20-year-old kid. So these are the growing pains of playing a young talent. But I believe in this kid. This kid's going to be great. He's going to be a star. And sometimes it takes. You don't want him to be. You don't want him to be the game-changing mistake. But sometimes, that's how players get. That's how they grow. So Lalos is more the backline communicator, and Lalos is a warrior, gives his heart and soul to the game every time he's out there. Thought he fought hard tonight, I thought both center backs sniffed out a bunch of stuff, but got to look at who they were in the wide areas when these goals happened. Maybe they're losing track of guys, and that's probably what happened. But I haven't looked at the goals in close caption, so I can't really speak to what happened to them yet.
Thank you, Buzz. And with that, will conclude tonight's post-match press conference.